Hello, welcome to the Compendium of Discomfort. My name is Michael, but today I don't matter. I'm just here to give you a little heads up because things happen that are common in our main channel, but uncommon here because here you are used to see me talking about Japanese movies or some other slightly related stuff. But today is the great, wonderful debut on this channel, at least, of my wonderful co-host who I usually talk to in German on the audio-only podcast channel, and he has a guest who is not less wonderful. That's the great DECosmic, and they talked about a video game that's called Dynasty Warriors Origins, and it's a typical audio-only podcast, and that's what you're about to hear here, but you are not gonna see anything. Believe me, it's better. They're both so beautiful. You just fall in love with them and you would never be able to sleep again, and so it's okay. Just listen to their lovely voices talking about a seemingly pretty great video game. I enjoyed this episode very much and I hope you will too. So here they are, Dynasty Warriors Origins, so enjoy.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Compendium of Discomfort. My name is DECosmic, and I'm here with Don. You might know him as Mike or Michael. What's up, Don?
That's me. I'm here as well.
It's true. And we are talking about Dynasty Warriors Origins today.
So, that's the new mainline title of the Dynasty Warriors series, which hasn't had one in I want to say 5 years. I think DW9 was like 2019.
I feel like it was 2017. I feel like it's been longer.
I think it was like the same year as Dissidia and Monster Hunter World or something, so it might have been around that. Anyway, that game sucked. We're not talking about DW9 today. So to the eagle-eyed listener, there might be some confusion here, which is who's that other guy? So as you said, it's DECosmic. I just use Cosmic, but who exactly are you, if I may ask?
Yeah, so again, my name is DECosmic. We'll have said it 3 times by now in this episode. But yeah, I typically go by Cosmic on the internet. I am a speedrunner of a variety of action games. Primarily, I focus on the Devil May Cry series. Recently, I've got into speedrunning Musou games or Musou games. You told me how to pronounce this correctly, and I completely forgot. Correctly. Musou, okay. It's not
with a long second syllable, so Musou.
Oh, okay. Musou. Okay, gotcha. I'm gonna totally butcher that later and just go back to Mushu, but it's fine.
That's fine.
But I've recently gotten into running Musou games and with Sengoku Basara, and I'm gonna probably be speedrunning a little bit of Dynasty Warriors Origins. But yeah, it's cool. You can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/DECosmic, and you can find my VODs and other stuff that I do on youtube.com/@DECosmicRuns if you want to check out some of that stuff. But I've run a ton of action games from Chaos Legion to, my first speed game was Devil May Cry 2, of all things. And yeah, there's just a lot on there. It's like Bujin Guy, Chaos Legion. I've run Stranger of Paradise as well, Final Fantasy Origin. There's a lot. You should go check it out. That would be cool to see you.
Yeah, and usually I don't know if you, the listener, watches GDQ or anything, but usually most of the time you'll also find Cosmic there running some either the DMC5, the action game, or some action game you've never heard of.
Yeah, I recently did Van Helsing, the PS2 tie-in game for the Hugh Jackman movie at the last GDQ, which was AGDQ 2025. And that was fun.
Yeah, very cool run, 30 minutes or something. I definitely recommend watching that one. Yeah, and since I didn't want to just waffle about DW Origins by myself, and Michael hasn't played it, the other Michael, and I know Cosmic, so I thought, hey, this is a guy who plays action games. Maybe we can provide a sort of specific perspective on it, especially because I do play both action games, as everyone knows. And also specifically a lot of Warriors or Musou games. So I'm not to toot my own horn, but I do play a lot of these games. I have some expertise.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're coming into this with a lot more recent knowledge of the series. My most recent comparison for Dynasty Warriors is Dynasty Warriors 5. And the one that actually is the most recent in my memory is Dynasty Warriors 4, because I was playing, Devil Kings, and I was playing Sengoku Basara 2 Heroes, and then I went, I kind of want to go back and play some Dynasty Warriors 4. And let me tell you, when I say that Sengoku Basara was so far ahead of Dynasty Warriors from the moment that series dropped.
Absolutely, yeah.
Dynasty Warriors 4 was 2003, and Dynasty Warriors 5 was 2004 or something. And
yeah, the 6 is during the generation 6 to 7 transition.
Yeah, so I thought that they were far again, it's one of those things where you play a game as a kid and you have incredibly fond memories of it.
Yeah.
And then you play it again as an adult and you're able to parse through a little bit more of what's happening, and it's man, there's nothing happening in this game mechanically. There is so little happening, dude. And the amount of enemies that they had on screen was just not it. There was just, even compared to something like Sengoku Basara 1 or Devil Kings, and then, Sengoku Basara 2 afterwards, Capcom was just so far ahead of those 4 or 5 entries that Koei Tecmo put out. So I didn't really think that prior to Dynasty Warriors Origins getting announced, I was really going to have a ton of interest in Musou games coming forward. But then Origins got announced, and it just seemed like it was going to be a whole it's these things that series do, right? Where they finally decide, hey, maybe I should get a shower and put on a fresh set of clothes so I don't stink and I'm not too iterative, It felt like they were finally doing that for Dynasty Warriors, and I was really excited. And I mean, the game, TLDR, the game is awesome. So it's been very cool to come back to the series and get a little bit more reacquainted with where it came from. But in terms of comparing it to the past titles, you're going to have to fill in the gaps there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the first DW title I played was 3 at a friend's. I had a demo of 3, I think, which had 3 characters, 1 per faction, or maybe 4 and 1 from the other faction as well. I don't remember. But then I played it at a friend's, and he had every character unlocked, and I saw the same character select screen, which is a wheel, I think, in 3, and I was holy fuck.
Yeah, there's a lot. Even in Dynasty Warriors 4, I remember just how many characters there were, and it was just, you could spend tons and tons of hours. As a kid, when your playtime was regulated, that amounted to months and months of playing a Dynasty Warriors game. And it was great. I'm sure my parents loved it because they didn't have to buy new games for a while. I was oh, she's just going to keep playing Dynasty Warriors 4. This is great.
Awesome. So I kind of played the PS2 stuff on and off. Fell off a bit, didn't get DW7 when it came out. I think I had my PS3 during that time already. And I got back into these games when with Warriors Origins 3, which is this big ass crossover title. Which is of Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, and some other Koei Tecmo properties and some characters that don't belong in there, but who gives a shit? It's a big crossover title with 140 characters or something like that.
Yeah,
crazy stuff. And
Warriors Orochi is people have tried to convince me on Warriors Orochi, and then the time that they do it, it's still $50 or $60, and I'm no,
that's crazy.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah,
it's not happening.
Yeah, like for some reason, sometimes I feel like they just forget they have these titles on like digital storefronts, and then they just forget to put them on sale. Because I'd be looking at Words OG 3 as you said, and it's like way too. That's like a PS3 game. You cannot sell me a PS3 game for $40 online. That doesn't work.
No.
Like on a digital store. I mean, like the whole used games market aside.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
Yeah, and after that, went back to DW7, and then I just kind of stuck with the series and a bunch of spin-offs. Didn't play all of them because there was way too many during that time. But I also during that time I also started playing the Senku Basara games, and which like I didn't play the latest one, which is like this kind of spin-off title of 4. I forgot the name. Where like the two main characters have there's one after that. Which is like
Sonata
which has like a new, yeah, exactly, which has like
Den.
new movesets and designs for the two main characters. I have no idea what that one's about, but like apart from that, yeah, no, and like just pressing buttons, as you said in Senku Basara, is like so far ahead from DW for like 6 games or something.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with DW7 they just kind of like leaned a bit more into their own strengths, because I really like 7 and 8, I should say. And when I played 8, I was just kind of like, yeah, this is like, I don't know where they're gonna go from this, because it has like 80 characters or something. Has like at the end of the game's life cycle, it had unique movesets for everyone, has like story modes for everyone, has these hypothetical story modes, and I was just like, I don't know. You can't really make a sequel to this where you don't change things radically, right?
Yeah.
They didn't. DW9 has the open world bullshit, but that game is bad. I for some reason I did actually play that one at launch, and I greatly regret it. It's bad, and that one didn't get an expansion to my knowledge. So I was just like, yeah, they are just gonna go back to the drawing board with GW and they're just gonna have to do, either they pretend 9 didn't exist somehow and 10 is just like the sequel to 8, or they go back to the drawing board and make something like Origins, and like and they did. And like I remember the announcement trailer was doing some pretty bad state of play. But they had a DW Origins trailer, and I was like, "This looks great." I don't know, this like feels like as I said, after 8, I was just like, I don't know, what are they gonna do? And this feels like to me, feels like they were trying to make like a proper evolution rather than a sequel.
Yeah.
Like scale back some stuff. There's way less characters. There's like one playable main character, and you get like 3 characters per faction or so you can switch out briefly during battle. There's way less weapons. I think there's like 9 or something in total.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, it's like 8 or 9.
And it's like only half of the story, because just in case you guys don't know, DW always tells the same story, which sounds insane whenever I say it. But
it's a little hard to explain to people sometimes. Like, yeah, it's all the same novel, just it iterates on itself.
Mm. And the Realms of the Three Kingdoms novel, which is like from the 16th century or something. So the guy made a ton of stuff up, and that's great for a video game because you can say, "Oh yeah, this dude was a magician."
Yeah.
Like, okay. Well, like,
all right.
Sure. Why
cool.
Not?
Awesome. This guy, this guy could see the wind or whatever. Like, yeah, sure.
Exactly. And like it serves as inspiration, kind of like how in Senku Basara everyone has like these super exaggerated traits. But if you check out who the person actually was, there's usually something that inspired this. Yeah, and it's not like as over the top in DW, but generally speaking, everyone has like 1 or 2 outstanding traits that are like inspired by some description in the novel. Yeah,
it feels like with DW Origins specifically, it feels like in terms of scale or in terms of the treatment that they gave it, it reminds me a lot of like when the PS3 generation started, and like Batman games and superhero games were like all about scale. And then Rocksteady came out with Arkham Asylum, and a lot of what Arkham Asylum served to do was like scale a lot of what people thought was going to happen back. Like, we thought, you know, that on 7th gen, it was like you were going to be driving the Batmobile around Gotham City from jump.
Yeah.
And that didn't come until 2 games later, and it was bad. But, like, you know, Origin, and, I mean, to an extent, like, Stranger of Paradise, a lot of these spin-off titles, they serve the purpose of, like, scaling back the title and just bringing it down to something a little more focused. And, like, I'm glad that with, spoilers, like, Origins only tells, what, like, a third of the story or something like that? Of the novel.
Said, like, if this is like not really a spoiler because I won't spoil the outcome, but there's a battle of Chibi, which they keep pronouncing wrong in the game, by the way.
They keep saying Chibi, right?
Yeah, they say
Chibi. I'm like, that sounds so wrong. Like,
yeah, it's like essentially think of like the sure in English. It's kind of like that. So you just say like Chibi or Chibi is like usually more correct. This is like still wrong because I don't speak Mandarin, right? I don't know these actual inflections, but if you say it like that, is more correct and no one will shoot you. It ends at Chibi, which is like a decisive battle where all factions are involved, which is really funny because the factions don't really exist properly yet as like kingdoms, so the game ends before the 3 kingdoms exist.
But it's the Origins.
Which is also fair. Like it has like roughly the same starting point as the other DW games. Just ends like at this big battle, and that makes total sense because, as you said, they like scale it back a little, get like a little focus. We don't need these 80 characters to tell this entire story anymore. We don't need to introduce even more protagonists. We don't need to have like unique weapons for everyone. No, we just like do this more focused thing, and maybe they'll do another one in the sequel. I don't know, but and if you played the old games, you also definitely instantly recognize these characters. Like it's not like supposed to be a reboot where everything is completely different.
I call it a soft.
It's more like it's like a soft reboot. Yeah, exactly. Where like we try a new start for a lot of things, but it's still very much DW underneath all of that.
Yeah, I did notice that they sort of like made the designs for everybody a little more grounded as well. And I'm sure that was probably intentional just to make everybody seem a little more ordinary compared to the nameless protagonist, which, like, I'm sorry. Number one, like, this is one of my few complaints about this game. If I pick the default, like, character name, just have people say Wanderer in their dialogue, dude. I can understand if, like, I picked Waluigi and you don't want to record Sun Se, like, saying, Waluigi, I'm very glad that you were here to help us. Like, but, like, you know, if in the first battles people are just omitting my name and it's like, bro, that's the name you gave me. Like, I didn't pick that. Like, can't we just say Wanderer? Like, I'm very glad you were here to help. I was glad too until you forgot my name. Like,
that's really rude in that game.
and then like there's some dialogue that doesn't make sense, like when you omit the other character's name, where like I forget who it was, maybe it's Sensei or Sun Jian who's talking to you in Sun Shangjiang, and then he just goes, Sun Shangjiang, I need your help, but he's omitting the Wanderer's name because it's like, you know, Wanderer, Sun Shangjiang, you know, I'm really glad that I had your help, or I need your help, and it's just like in the spoken dialogue he's just acknowledging her, and I'm like, dang. Like,
it's kind of
rude.
It's like even weirder because usually if you have like an OC that you can name, a lot of games will give you a title on top of that, so they can just distinguish you by that, and they give you one in this as well. Yeah, it's like the default name, but they're like,
no, it's like
we're just gonna make it like a short awkward break.
Yeah, just okay, sure, all right, awesome. And I think
a little weird.
I think that the flaw there is that they give you that generic name part of the way through the story, right? And like they do that, and like really what they should have had was that like the character only remembers that like his like he only remembers his title, right? That's really what should have happened. Like, and he should have just, like, I don't know if we want to say it's Zillawan out loud. I guess I just did, but
no, that's fine.
But
it
like,
comes up pretty early,
But like, I feel like instead of just having you pick the name, he should have just said, like, you know, to Guan Yu, all I remember is like the name Zillawan, and then they just call you that for the rest of the name. I was a little, what's it called? I was a little perplexed that they didn't allow you at least like male or female selection as well for like the form of
because they have one.
Yeah, exactly. Like they have a character that looks like it could just be the woman version of Zillawan. So, and they even give her a different name, you know, but they could just swap around the titles. It's sort of the same way that Astral Chain did it, you know, where there's the generic title that is just swapped between the two siblings.
Yeah, I was also thinking they might do that, but nah. And like, this isn't like a lot of. I'm not trying to like make assumptions here, but like this is less effort than it usually would be in a lot of games with exchangeable protagonists, because you don't need to record a lot of lines. There's like the in battle grunting and that kind of stuff, but apart from that, your character doesn't talk. All the dialogue that your character says is like you picking options, but they don't actually say them.
Yeah, or like enemy officer defeated. You know?
Yeah, that's like in battle, exactly. So there's like a lot less overall. It's still obviously still resources, but like I feel like we were already halfway there, and they were just like, nah.
Yeah, it's like there's some things that they definitely, I think, kind of forewent. I don't really know what their budget or like timeline was for this game. I can't really speak to that, obviously. But it definitely seems like they honed in a lot on like the gameplay aspects and the overall world of the game, as opposed to putting a ton of effort into making the character totally, like, I guess relatable is probably the word that you're looking for. Realistic is not the word, even though I think that's what some people would choose. But like, or I guess fully realized. Like Jack Garland is pretty much a fully realized character. And
it's not an avatar.
Yeah, and like Zillawan, he's like nearly there, but just not quite. And I mean, to some extent, I don't feel like that he could have been, because every time you talk to somebody, they're always so grateful to see him. They always have something good to say. They always are like falling in love with him about how great he is and how unmatched his potential on the battlefield is. Like, there's no way that this character that's just totally flawless and silent all the time is going to be fully realized, because he's effectively like the playable Mary Sue for the player. You know, like he's somebody that is, you are seeing the eyes, like you are seeing the events of history unfold through, and his role at the end of the day is not important because he's not real. So so just to be safe, there's a made up character, and there's a couple of
as
them.
Opposed to the structure of the other games, this one starts like I don't know, like 180 AD or something. I don't remember when exactly, during the yellow turban bullshit. And the Jack Garland came out in that one. And you just kind of like, because there's no factions at this point yet, so you just tag along with like the important characters. You get to meet the three faction leaders, even though like some of them die before their factions actually exist. I'm not gonna tell anyone here in case you guys haven't played it.
That's fair.
And then like at some point, I think it was chapter 2 or something, you get to choose what faction you line with. Chapter 3, right? Yeah. So you can still like play missions for all of the factions, and then you're like, oh, well, I like these guys the most, or like these have the coolest color scheme or whatever, and then you just side with them. And then you play the rest of the game through that story up until Chubby. You can, after you finish it, you can go back and do the other ones. So it's not like you don't need to start like a new save or anything. It's essentially NG Plus at really that point.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, and DW8 had like these hypothetical story modes where you could do the faction but better, basically.
Yeah, the not historically accurate version. Of the faction.
This one has that as well, but it's like less there's like less changes because of it. In DW8, you had like new stages. A bunch of characters would just stick around for the rest of the story and just be there and talk to you most of the time. And the ending is completely different. It's not that much in this game, but there's like some replay value for each faction as well.
Yeah,
I think that's the idea.
Yeah, I think the idea is that when you go through the whole story mode and you make your decision, and then like it's a long game, like especially if you do a lot during the story. So I don't think that they wanted people to have to play through like another 40 to whatever hour campaign. And just to get some different like perspective as well, because I think that's the cool thing about the story mode is that like if you're not privy to the information in the other faction, like you don't see what's happening in them. Like the moment that you make the decision to go with one of the factions, it's not like the game clues you in really about like what's happening in real time. It has a couple of generic things that it'll show you, but like otherwise you have no idea. Like, and that was pretty cool. I thought it was gonna like maybe show me some like cutscenes from the other faction or whatever. Nope. Nuh-uh.
Yeah, just like at the start of a chapter, it's like, by the way, these guys are also still around and do some stupid stuff in the meantime while you are doing this other thing.
Yeah,
because they don't really have a lot of conflict with each other until a certain point.
Yep.
And that's like most of what we play through here. So like literally the origins of the Three Kingdoms. Yeah. Nice, good job. You didn't just choose the subtitle because it sounds cool.
I tell you, man, Koei Tecmo is 2 for 2 with games that have the title Origin in them or Origins. So
very much so. Like thinly veiled Stranger Paradise propaganda. You guys should play that game. If you like Neo especially, you should play it. If you don't like Neo, you should play it anyway because it's amazing, and Jack Garland's like the funniest person ever made.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. I was actually gonna get your opinion on the sort of open world stuff, because I know that, because I think you mentioned that DW9 is open world, and my question then is like, how does this really differ? Like, because for those that haven't played Origins yet, essentially you are like PS1 style JRPG on a map with your character being massive by comparison to some of the cities and stuff, and the other characters that are around the map being massive, and then you walk around that way. And I felt like this was pretty decently executed. I never felt like I mean, when I first saw it, I was like, I'd rather it be missions, but with the way that they have like the random skirmishes and the different missions and how you meet people laid out, as well as like the different challenges you can pick up from different characters in history, I felt like this was a good way to let you sort of go at your own pace, and the map's not too empty. I mean, there's a couple of empty things about it, like the crafting system is a little barren, and like really all you pick up on the map are like the pyroxenes and the old coins. But there's like no super boss, I guess, or anything, which would have been really PS1 JRPG style. But
red ruby weapon
just chilling, yeah. Well, so if you side with Cao Cao or Liu Bei, then you have to fight Ruby Weapon because it's being controlled by Sun Ce. But and then if you'd sided with like Xinjiang and Liu Bei, you'd have to fight what is it?
The Emerald.
And,
what's the other? It's the Sapphire. I don't think that one exists.
Well, I guess we could just say the Liu Bei gets a mega weapon or ultima weapon or whatever. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, I felt like this was pretty good.
Funny, yeah.
I felt like this was a pretty good way to handle this style of open world exploration and let the player just like kind of do. I mean, it sort of railroads you a little bit because it kind of just tells you where to go all the time. But I thought this was pretty decent, and I was wondering like what about DW9 flopped so hard in terms of being open world.
Okay, so DW9 has it's a game with it has like these big battles naturally, like a normal Musou game, but it has an open world that is more akin to like the standard video game open world.
Okay.
So like you can dig around and run to places and find random crap just lying around, and but you can't really do a lot in it. You still gotta go back to the main mission at the end and continue that one. And it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of empty. It's kind of boring to go through. It's very big. I don't care about it being big, to be honest. Like, it's just whatever. I don't think I hate open world games per se. It's just I don't rarely play them, so my my tolerance for bullshit in those games is usually somewhat high because I'm not like on my 7th open world game of the month.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's just kind of empty and boring and not fun to go through. And then in Origins, as you said, they have like this JRPG world map, which works way better. Like the ways are very short from battle to battle. If you want to, you can just let the game tell you where to go. If you don't want that, you can dick around a little, do these little skirmishes and side missions, and not find a lot of stuff, but you can find some stuff.
There is value in exploration
for finding stuff. Yeah. And I don't know, I think this actually worked pretty well. I don't think this game would like fall apart if they changed it to a mission structure. But I do think this map is pretty alright, to be honest. I never thought it detracted from the experience in any sort of way.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Especially because like I mean there's a lot of like little extra missions you can pick up from characters, especially with like the training that they give you, which I gotta be real, Lubu giving you the win 5 battles without getting damaged training, dude. I was like, come on, man. Like, so for those that haven't played the game, there's a mechanic or a feature, I guess you could call it even, in the middle of battles called duels. And this has been at least a thing since DW4, as far as I'm aware. But I don't remember if it even worked the same. But it
didn't. This is like the way it works is new, yeah.
Yeah, so you are challenged by an officer in a battle, and then you're put into an enclosed space, but like it's not totally separate from the world map like it was in Dynasty Warriors 4, which both has you in like a cage match or something.
Yeah, it's like in the middle of the big army fighting, and they like gather around you in a circle and cheer on the other guy most of the time.
And I remember when I first saw this feature, I was so hyped because it is so cool. Like it really harkens you back to I mean, really, some of the, like, I think in the movie Troy with Brad Pitt, this is even a thing where, like, they're watching these, everybody sort of just, like, clears around these two titans fighting, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think maybe this is also President 300, but I don't remember. And I'm sure that this, you know, maybe this evolved in the later DW games or other Musou games, but, like, it very much was just like a fantastical representation of these like on-site duels, or like, I mean, really like fighting game stages where it reminded me of like a fighting game stage like in Tekken 4 where like there's the club of people around you, and it's just it's a very like elegant way to do it because it doesn't section you off or anything. It just keeps you there in the heat of the battle, and it's like. And it's not based on health, so you're not gonna like die fighting these people. Like if you lose to these duels, like so you can always take them. Pretty much, it's based on morale, and the more morale that you have going in, the less that you need to hit the other guy to defeat them. Which I think is also an interesting strategy too, because depending on when you actually take that duel or when you go and find that duel, it can be easier or harder depending. Granted, I don't think this matters a ton until you're on like some of the harder difficulties, but. It's still neat nonetheless that they kind of took that into account. So
yeah, I really like how there's like you get like a short black screen if you accept the duel, and like where everyone prepares, and then everyone just like stops beefing immediately, and they just circle around
like,
you.
Yeah, fuck them up.
Exactly, they fucking love it. Yeah, this 1v1, and the cool thing is after the duel is over, it goes back into the gameplay without a black screen again. It just because it's usually only in specific spots where there's already a big battle going on.
Yeah,
and so it just goes back into that, and you just go back to whacking 1,000 dudes.
Yeah, which like the amount of just like seamless gameplay in this is like unreal to me, you know. And like, I mean, again, we're living in the 9th gen, so load times were sort of a thing of the past at this point. But like, I never really felt like I was, unless they were talking like, you know, politics and borders, like between the characters and all that.
The trade routes.
Yeah, the trade routes, like all that sort of stuff. Or like it was somebody like glazing Zilliwan, you know, or whatever. Where Guan Yu's like, I want your voice to be etched in my memory. Let us talk all night. And Zilliwan just sort of like nods at him, and then it fades to black, you know.
He did not talk to him.
He's like, I'm not talking, dude. No way. But like, there was never really a point where I was waiting to do something, especially in battle, right? Like, yeah. And man, like even just a couple of years ago, or even just a few years ago, you would have still had load screens on this stuff. But like even, and I've done like a speed run of chapter 1 at this point, and I can still tell you that even when you're skipping like all over the cutscenes and everything, like you're still doing stuff pretty quickly. Like especially when you get into battle, there's always like something going on. And the fact that like not only can these duels transition seamlessly back into just regular gameplay, when you say like you're going back to whacking 1,000 dudes, you're not kidding. Like there's a ton of dudes on screen, everybody. Like there is like thousands and thousands of troops on screen. It's not a joke. Like you step into some of these like large forces battles and you're like, oh, like the first time you see a large force, like with the Zhang Zhao and the yellow turbans, it's like, oh man, I have really stepped into a 9th gen Musou game. Holy crap. Which, I mean, again, we said at the very start, like the point of this was really to draw back the scale. And that's true to an extent, but that's, I think, a focus on the storytelling and the exploration and some of the mechanics. But in terms of the scale of what's actually possible in a fight, again, I don't know how DW9 was, but it seems like this really, the DW Origins really expanded what was possible in the heat of battle, and that's awesome to me.
It's like, for me, the moment that like sometimes it had me like this is when you get in these big showdowns at the end, and then you get these submissions where the game's like, oh, do this stuff in 2 minutes, and then at one point the game's like, you get 700 KOs in 2 minutes.
And then it's like,
all right,
it's like, oh, okay, sure. And then
they mean it.
And I think too, like, especially you sort of get a sense of the scale of how many enemies are on screen. So like, for example, in the fight against Zhang Zhao, when it tells you, you know, oh, kill 300 people, you know, or whatever, which is an insane statement out of context. But when you like, you don't even have like your ultimate Musou at that point. But you like do one of the Musou attacks, and the KO count just shoots up like 150 people, you know, if you stand in a big enough crowd. And it's like, man, I mean, especially for me coming from like DW4 and 5, or even, you know, like the Basara games recently, because those battles are not exactly to this scale, even in the later games in the series. It was wild to me to be like, I thought there were going to be like 20 dudes on screen, but like, no, there's a ton. Like, it's incredible. I think that their goal was something like 1,000 or 10,000 people on screen. I don't think they reached that, but 500 to 700 people on screen at once, like, that's killing it, man. That's awesome.
In the Gen 7 and Gen 8 games, I feel like in DW7 and 8, they had like, I mean, 9 to an extent. 9 was technically not super sound, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they still had a lot of dudes on there. But I remember seeing the reveal trailer, and there's like, they had this moment of the big charge of the two armies clashing against each other. I was just thinking, oh yeah, no, this is definitely the Gen 9 Musou game.
Yeah.
See, we have arrived there, yeah.
And part of me was like, there's always that grain of salt you got to take with trailers, right? Where I was like, maybe they'll have that in the final game. And then they had that and then some. And I was like, oh, man. Which, I mean, I think we said before, like, hitting buttons in these games feels pretty good. When you hit a button and it hits, like, 20 dudes at once, and those are just the dudes in your immediate vicinity, that feels even better. Like,
yeah,
it's really cool. I mean, especially when like, and the thing is that like when you have this grand scale of battle, it gives you even more incentive to like do more things back to back. So I guess we'll get into like some of the mechanics here. There's these battle arts. For those that haven't played the game, and the battle arts is essentially like what Final Fantasy 16 should have done with its cooldowns, but I'm not going to dig on Final Fantasy 16 too much here, or try not to, because I've said this at some point, not publicly, but I've said at some point to some friends, and I think to you as well, Don, that DW Origins it feels like a lot of what they did with this game in terms of mechanics was what I wanted Final Fantasy 16 to do, in terms of like switching over to real-time combat. And the battle arts, with the way that you build up these stocks of bravery, which I guess bravery comes in stocks. In real life as well.
Ancient Chinese secret.
Yeah, I think in real life this is true as well. Like every time you have like another, whenever you have like another Steel Reserve, which is a really crappy alcohol, you probably build like 2 or 3 bravery at once because that drink is so terrible. Or maybe like a 4 Loko, you build 5 bravery for those that know what that is. But as the more you fight, you build these stocks of bravery, and you can spend it on battle arts, which are essentially like cooldowns that you would see in like an action RPG. They're special moves.
Yeah.
And some of them allow you to actually interrupt enemy attacks. And sometimes they cost like they give you one by default that's like a palm strike, and it just costs you 1 bravery. So you can do it a ton of times, especially in the beginning of the game when you have no other stagger moves. When you get into these fights against large armies, they send like 5 charges after you, and you can stagger each one of these like lines of infantry, like one after the other. And then there's a QT to press triangle, like you're in Kingdom Hearts 2, and you do a cool move to them in a canned animation. But like if they just sent you the 1 charge and then you staggered it, and then like, okay, now I'm back to fighting the boss, that doesn't give you the same sense of scale of like, oh my gosh, there's like 5 or 10 of these lines of infantrymen just coming after me one by one, and I'm just going to stagger them all the time. And it's like you're just constantly doing stuff. And then it's like, all right, I got to crowd control here for a little bit before I go back to fighting the boss. Sometimes you'll crowd control anyway while fighting the boss, because if you do like the assault after you take down an enemy's stun gauge, you like anybody else that's in the immediate vicinity also gets whirlwinded and then knocked away, which is nice. But yeah, there's the fact that like they've multiplied the amount of available like actions and then multiplied the amount of enemies that are available just means you're always doing something, and you're always incentivized to do more than like, I mean, we're all square triangle enjoyers out here, but like
absolutely
the fact that like the game incentivizes you to press tons of varied buttons not only because of the tons of mechanics that you have, but also because of the tons of scale is sick.
Yeah, it's like really smartly playing into this entire idea of how many dudes there's supposed to be. I also like, generally speaking, the stages. Like, they're 10 to 20 minutes depending on which one you play. There's usually something going on. Like you should never just like dick around and wait for something to happen. Even if the main story of that stage is currently like going through a bunch of dialogue, there's usually a base you can go to. There's usually some dudes you can whack. I don't think any of the stages ever slow down, to be honest.
No, I would say
you're just always going forward. Your guys will eat shit if you don't have them. You need to run around constantly. You constantly need to be doing stuff, like both in terms of in immediate combat and throughout the entire stage, which I think is like very much on purpose. Like the entire game is constantly flowing forward, basically.
Yeah, and like going back and replaying some of the stages in Chapter 1, it's very clear to me too that like not only is the stages, not only are the stages constantly moving forward, but there's like multiple ways you can move them forward depending on how you approach them. Because like, for example, in the I'm gonna just spoiler it up, because like in the final battle against the Yellow Turbans, when I first played that stage casually, I kind of just took like the low road and like fought fought against the volley of archers and like fought with Jahu Dun and Jahu Yuan, I think was the other guy's name. And you kind of just like brute force your way down like the low road, essentially, like taking out all their forces and everything. And then eventually you get to the Dongzhuo force and all that sort of, or the Zhangjiao force, I'm sorry. But when I went back and replayed the stage, I found out that like there was a ladder right at the beginning of the stage, really, where I could have just gone up to the high road and just like booked it immediately to the main force. Yeah. And there's multiple paths you can like just take in how you want to approach these fights. And like, I mean, even the Battle of Wan Castle in Chapter 1, there's 3 sides of that castle that you can attack and decide how you want to attack it. You can like go forward, like just brute force it into the main with like Sun Jian, or you can go to the left and fight like, you know, the side entrance with Liu Bei, which, spoilers for the speedrun, I'm pretty sure that's the fastest way. But anyway, it would, because he gets the laddermen up there. That's like the only time I've ever stood still in this game is when the laddermen are coming. But there, like, even just in these couple of missions that I've replayed, it's very clear that like not only is there like different ways to approach that, like not only are they flowing a lot, and there's just tons of like moving parts in them, but you have the ability to interact with pretty much all of the moving parts at any time that you want to.
Yeah, I really like that too, because like you get like a lose condition and you get a win condition, and the lose condition is usually very simple. It's usually one of this guy can't die, or like maybe it's up to 3 or 4 guys, I think is a maximum. But that is like literally the only thing that you need to prevent from happening, and then the goal is literally just you need to beat up the last guy at the end of the stage, and everything in between is like the obviously the NPCs they go to specific bases and whatnot. They will lose or win these depending on what you do. Like you can help them sometimes. Obviously, then they just win because you're like the coolest guy in the universe.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're just that dude.
If you get the morale up, they will also win, and the entire battle just goes different. And you don't, in return, you don't need to go back to defend your commander, just kind of depending on what you do. So like you have these big maps. I'm not a fan of the Samurai Warriors maps. DW maps I always really like. Because Samurai Warriors maps like a shit ton of small corridors, and they always look like someone was having a stroke drawing them. These games have corridors as well. I don't really have a problem with that. But they always have open fields as well. They are better connected, generally speaking. The open fields are especially important because of these giant army clashes, of course, which you just straight up couldn't do in the average Samurai Warriors map. No, that's like really nice. Just I noticed this too when I replayed a few stages to get one of the true endings, where it's just like, oh, you can just go somewhere. Like if you know how the stage is gonna flow, you can do even more, because you might know this one NPC who you can't let die will go here. So you can take care of that in advance. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes the enemies ambush you or whatever. But you can already be there in that case if you know, and then immediately beat them up. So yeah, you have a lot of agency, I feel, over where you want to be in the battle. Because again, the only thing you need to do is let this one guy not die and beat up the other guy at the end. Everything in between is just at your own volition, essentially.
Yeah, and I mean, the game also seems quite aware of your agency as well. And it also will take the chance to deride you about that agency, which is pretty funny too, because, like, obviously, when I've been, like, routing the speedrun for it, because I think the whole game is probably going to be, like, 5 or 6 hours or something. But for right now, I'm just focusing on, like, Chapter 1. So a lot of this referential stuff is going to come from Chapter 1. Or from the prologue. So obviously when you run a game, right, for those that aren't really familiar with speedruns for like Musou games, a lot of this is like cutting out the interactions that you have, and a lot of it is just sort of charging the boss, or getting to the point where you can just charge the boss as quickly as possible. Now, in pretty much every other Musou game that I've played, the game doesn't really seem to acknowledge that you're doing this. It just sort of happens. But in Dynasty Warriors Origins, the first time that I actually fight Zhang Zhao against his large army, like about a third away through the fight, or at least like when you step into some of these areas before you're supposed to be there, the game goes, like somebody acknowledges this and goes, "Oh, you're charging in alone." And it's like, yes, I am actually. I would like to get out of here as quickly as possible. And there's
your job.
Yeah. And then there's a point even where when I stayed in this fight for like an extended period of time, Dong Zhou, who at the time is an ally, even says, like, you know, he's talking to the other officer and he's talking about you, and he goes, can he not read the flow of battle? Like, what's he doing? And it was like, wow, you know, the game is like not only telling me, like, it's telling me that I'm doing something wrong when I'm not, but it's at least acknowledging my actions as opposed to like just going along with what I'm doing, which I think is a lot. It speaks to the level of detail that they've put into a lot of these fights, which I never really felt like any of the fights were like underbaked in any form of like interaction. And I think that it really shows too that they put a lot of consideration into how fights can turn, because when you die, there's multiple checkpoints that you can have, and you can start from any one of those checkpoints. Which allows you to, if you died and you feel like, okay, well, this probably started a lot earlier than I thought, so you can go back even further than like your most recent checkpoint and just correct the battle from there. So not only does the game like give you a lot of these options, but it acknowledges that it gives you a lot of these options, and in some cases it will make fun of you for taking some of the options that it gives you, which I think is always nice. A little, like, you know, a little jab here and there at the player is fine.
Something I also notice about that is, which I think most of this is due to the protagonist who wasn't really there, because in a lot of DW games, or in a lot of Musou games in general, you have like a very predetermined courses throughout the stage, and you just need to do all the things correctly, essentially. Maybe sometimes like capture all the bases, and then it lines up like 4 bases, and you just go through them the fastest route because you're not stupid. Yeah. And but in this game, this game has that too, but that's not what I mean. Like in this game, you don't play as, for example, let's take DW 8, where like you have between 2 and 4 characters you can play per stage. It always depends on who was actually there. Yeah. And they do different things depending on who you're playing. So you need to go to specific parts of the map, that kind of stuff. Whereas in this game, these characters, they still do that, but you are like essentially superimposed on top of that. Yeah. And you change the battle. You can go through it in the way that you want. And as you said, the characters will also comment on this. So this is like definitely intentional as far as I'm concerned. Not that it matters really. Like it works either way, but they actually did want people to do this, I feel, because a lot of times the game is just not going to give you a direction. Like it's going to put you somewhere, and you're going to be pointed towards some base, some enemy. And then like at the start, you just go forward, and it's usually the correct direction. But after like the first officers or base, you can just go wherever you want to. And the game will sometimes tell you like, oh, we are going to storm this. Or I remember there was like a battle very early on where you have like a force on the left and you have a big force in the middle preparing like a ram to get through the gate. Yeah. And you can just not help them with the ram. You just not do that.
That's Juan Castle. Luck, at least that's one instance of it, is Juan Castle. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's super cool. I really enjoy that, because a lot of like these maps are very open, but a lot of Musou games are still mostly linear.
Yeah, I would say.
And
so.
in this, you kind of need to actually check who's going where, how's the morale. Like if you want to be efficient, I mean, you can also just kind of wing it. I had one battle where almost everyone died, so I just went to this corridor before my boss, and like everyone just came to me, and I just beat all of them up, and I was like, well, this works.
I think that was one of the fights with Wu, right, where it's when Sun, who's the second son? I forget how you pronounce it.
Sun Chuan.
Yeah, Sun Chuan. There was a point where like things got very dire, and all of the enemies just came to Sun that guy.
Chuan,
I forgot his name already.
Sun Chuan, yeah.
Sun Chuan and Sun Chuan. And so, like, I was like, you know what? We're not going anywhere. We're just staying right here next to the commander, and we're just going to kill everybody. Like,
yeah, they all just come in.
Yep. And I was like, cool.
Because of the way the combat works, it is definitely like you can actually have proper 1v1 fights this time, with like back and forth flow. And it does still work when there's a lot of officers around. You will have to do... This is something I need to briefly, not in terms of the game, but in terms of players, I need to complain about. I think a lot of action game players are very bad at considering the camera. I think a lot of people are really bad at like thinking of the camera as something they need to take care of.
Yeah.
So if you have like a game with a lot of guys who can attack off screen, like for example, enemies can attack from off screen, or like Ninja Gaiden, they can attack from off screen just mid fight. I don't think this is like superior or worse or anything, but you have a game where enemies can do that. A lot of people will just not acknowledge that and kind of like be like, oh well, I got hit from off screen, nothing I can do, and I'm just like, well, you have a right stick on your controller.
Yeah.
you can position yourself. This is like a weird thing that people in action games tend to ignore a lot. This doesn't mean the camera is always good in these games. I mean, like, DMC sometimes has some issues. DW has issues.
It's tough, right? Because, like, to some extent with action games, too, like, you get to a point where the player outpaces the camera, right? Especially when somebody gets comfortable. And I never really felt like that in this game, unless there was a point where like I had a boss sandwiched against a wall, and like you know, you do like the assault mechanic, and all you see is just like the gusts of wind from the from coming off of the guy, and then he gets kicked across the thing, and it's like, oh, I can see my character again. But it's like, I think that at the very least, Origins definitely zooms the camera out enough where I never really felt like I was getting blindsided by things. Not to mention that, like, if there's an enemy that's like queued up to attack you from off screen, those lines of infantrymen, for example, that I mentioned earlier, it highlights them for you. So like you can at least see them coming in from the side, and the lines of infantry are long enough that one of them is at least going to pop up. Or in the middle of this, even if it doesn't show you them, it tells you what's going on because it's part of like another tactic that's happening. And it's like you can identify these grand tactics that are gonna happen by what the characters on the map are doing. So when you notice this, it's like, okay, well, now I know I need to watch out for this thing. If this happens, then like whatever. I will say, however, that when the crowd gets too dense and you get hit by a line of these infantrymen, you will crowd surf at times because your character has nowhere to land. And it looks very funny.
Something about like the whole fight. A lot of times you will be fighting multiple officers at once. I feel like the game is like very aware of this. It a lot of moves. I mean, it's a Musou game. Your moves, generally speaking, hit everything around you. But even like the parry. Oops, sorry. So in the game, if you can do this mid-action too. If you press the block button at the right time, you will do like this riposte move. And I actually want to like briefly address that because I super disagree with this one man I saw a post about it who said this is like a bad parry because it's too risk-free. And I get that notion. I get where this is coming from. The problem is you're playing the wrong game for that.
Yeah.
This is like I think the way the parry works is like very much on purpose. Like you can cancel your attacks with parries, right? This is as we were saying earlier. You're always moving forward in this game. This is not a game about stopping to parry moves. Like this is just not something you do. You can dodge cancel all of your stuff, like in Bayonetta, for example. In
DMC you can carry
everything.
Yeah, in DMC you can cancel everything with Royal Guard. So like.
Yeah, but that's just one of the characters, to be fair. Like in this, you can do this at all times with every weapon. And you're supposed to be able to do that. You're back to DMC, Nero also has like a move that cancels basically every action and has iframes. So I don't think this is like an issue in like those games either. But in DMC, usually this is like cost a resource in case of Neo's Devil Trigger activation.
Yeah.
It's like relatively risky in terms of Royal Guard, even if it is better in DMC 5, like
That is
better
true.
in quotes,
Yeah.
quote unquote, because it's like just less risky. But this is still like still like something you need to properly time. In this, you still need to time the parry, but it's not very hard overall. But I do think this is very much on purpose, and I think it's kind of ignoring how the game works to call this a bad parry. Because if you're playing a game which is about a back and forth in terms of like slow, deliberate movement, then yeah, I think a parry like that would be pretty bad.
Yeah.
For example, if a game which I love talking shit about, which is the first Lords of the Fallen. You can dodge cancel everything in that game, and that's a Souls game, so like a Souls-like rather. And like, why can I dodge cancel my attacks in a Souls-like? That's stupid. That's not what this game is supposed to be. You like misunderstood the assignment. But the other way around, I can ask about DW Origins. I could, which I don't have to because they answered the question properly, would be why can't I cancel my attacks with defensive options, which I can. Again, I can do everything. I can also use the good old DW strategy of fighting back by pressing circle.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, you can do that. That is fast.
Move, and it will hit through everything. It always works. It's a very good panic button. But I think the entire game is supposed to just keep you moving forward, and I think the parry is supposed to actually reflect that, and I think it works very well that way. Something I also wanted to say is because you were talking about the bravery attacks, because you get to map these 4 buttons, right? This is like a thing a lot of action games have been doing, where they're like, well, if you press one of the shoulder buttons, you get 4 moves on the face buttons, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, generally speaking, not a big fan of this. Not on DW Origins. I want to talk about that a bit later, but like overall, I don't really like the system because in a lot of games that I've played anyway, it encourages moves that are separate from your normal buttons.
That's true.
And they kind of don't interject a lot. Something that did this well is actually the Monster Hunter Grand Blue game, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, where a lot of these moves chain in or out of your other normal moves very well, which is very cool. I like that a lot. In this, I also really like a lot of these moves. As I said, there's 9 weapons, I think, in total.
I think so.
I was mostly
like
playing spear because I like spears. They all have different movesets. Actually, they don't all follow this old DW system of square, 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 triangle, which isn't bad. But I do like only 2 weapons have that, and I really like that. But for example, the spear has one of these moves that you can use your bravery for, which launches the enemy. Which is one of the... I think the spear has another launcher, but this is like a very easily accessible one. If you see that an enemy is staggering, you can do this move and it will juggle them. It will launch them and juggle. And then you can do like a specific air combo out of it. You can do the move again if you still have bravery. You can do the air finisher and whatnot. So these moves, they all chain like a little bit better together, rather than just being... Once again, I need to take the jab at FF16 here as well, where a lot of these moves are cooldowns rather than like moves in your moveset, essentially. Which is like, I get the idea. It's like a bit JRPG-ish, I guess. You have like the big move, but for an action game where you're supposed to combo stuff, I do still like FF16 a lot, by the way, just so people aren't like,
I do like FF16. I like FF16 as well, yeah.
Yeah, but there's like the way those moves they just kind of exist separately, and I don't like that in DW Origins. I feel like I can do like a chain. I can then do one of these moves a lot of the times because it has this system. DW8 has a system where you can also deplete like this bar above the enemy's head, and after you do that, in that game it works a little different. But after you do it, you do a finisher move, right? This game has that as well, and the bravery moves are actually, I think, always gonna damage it. So you can also use these if you didn't manage to break the bar, and it's like it's like almost broken. You do like a quick bravery move, and it's gonna break as well. So there's like some utility here where you can do either combos or bravery damage or giant A or E attacks or whatnot. It's very cool. Some of them are also just buffs, which it's a very apparent use.
It's a very I remember. I think it was the I want to say it was the. What was the other spear? The one that like you hold down, which is a really cool mechanic. So you hold down
the lance.
Triangle. The lance. Yeah, you hold down triangle and allows you to like tank hits to get more damage on whatever attack is unleashed. Which is like, that is so. I feel like that's so unique for a Musou game. Like to have a weapon that, because I mean, you just finished talking about right where like. This game is all about turning other people's turns into your turn.
Yeah. Essentially.
This is like the other side of that coin, right? Where their turn, it's fine. It's like you can take your turn. I'm gonna fuck you up afterwards. You know?
Yeah, no, that's like super smart about understanding what they're doing. I feel this is like you can take your turn in a way, but in this case, like. Even if the enemy takes your turn, that is still a turn for you in the end because you benefit from it. It's like a very cool mechanic for this game.
I don't know if you played that weapon a lot.
A bit, yeah. I tried one of them.
There was a point where like because I got every weapon to like at least 7 proficiency out of 8 or whatever. And let me tell you, dude, you stand in a large mob with that lance and things just die. Like it is incredible just like how much that mechanic is fed into from the scale like of the game. I don't know if that weapon works as well in one of the older gen games where there's just less enemies on screen to attack you, because there is something very satisfying about actually being able to use your health as a resource in a Musou game, which I don't know if that really exists outside of, at least in Dynasty Warriors. I don't know if that really exists outside of this title, because
no, not really.
It is pretty much all like these Musou games are pretty much just all about like I am a god and I'm just going to stay at full health like the whole time and decimate everything. But in this, it's like in this you're actually like tanking things and you're like making the decision to take more damage, and I think there's even accessories that kind of amplify this a little bit too, but I only know of one that's like if you're at 50% or more health you get more damage, which is easy enough to manage. But like it's really, really cool to see a weapon like that where they're actually going to reward you for letting the enemies attack you rather than just like, all right, keep going. So it at least brings a good dynamic to things, when, especially in a game where there's only 7 or 8 weapons.
Yeah, they all got like some stuff going on. I don't think all of them are like hitters.
No,
not all are winners here, but that's fine. The thing I really like is just that they all have something going on, and which is something they started doing towards, I want to say DW8, where weapons get their unique gimmicks, which are usually pretty fun. The base moveset is always in those games, not in this one, is still always these combo chains where you can press square up to 6 times.
Yeah.
And as long as you don't do the 6th one, you get a different combo move depending on when you press triangle. That's still present in this on 2 weapons. But apart from that, everything works differently and has like its own stuff. Sometimes like a bit less moves. Again, the hyper armor ones, you just want to tank stuff during your big charges. You get multiple charge moves as well, so you're not always doing the same one. But generally speaking, the weapons all have some sort of gimmick. Sometimes the gimmick is bad, but
yeah, like the what is it, like the staff, dude? Oh man,
yeah, the staff is just kind of boring to play.
Oh, dude, I mean, like, and here's the thing, right? It's like I am mostly a woo apologist, right? But
Same.
like, you know, like, but. And only the pretty boy like Zhou Yu uses the staff in Wu, but I'm like, y'all couldn't just make a better y'all couldn't just give that man a sword. Like, why is my man's walking around with like the lamest weapon in the game? Like, god damn it. So you said that like and you said that spear was your favorite of all the weapons, or spear is cool.
I played spear the most, by far. It's you can do like proper charge moves at any point in your chains. You can do like there's dodge charge moves, that kind of stuff. Those are pretty fun. And again, the bravery attacks on spear are pretty nice because it's got that launcher. As long as you have bravery points, you can keep doing it. So you just like you can do it midair as well. So you just kind of juggle people for a while.
I was really a fan of there were two weapons that kind of stood out to me as like being really like having a lot of thought really put into them. I think every weapon pretty much had thought put into it. I mean, in the case of staff, it definitely did. I just don't know if it was good thoughts.
It's just bad thoughts.
But like so, and then there's like an honorable mention here too as well. But I'll start with the first two, which is like the gauntlets and the wheels. And the gauntlets having like 3 different stances that you can just chain into like whenever you want to. Right, like you can even be like in a different stance, and then just like, for example, let's say you're in, I don't remember what it is, like let's say you're in the stance where you just hit triangle, because there's 3 ways to enter stances. You can either just hit triangle, you can hit triangle. I'm sorry, 4 ways. Triangle while you're in the middle of an attack, while you're in the middle of a square attack. Triangle with L1, and then evade triangle. But you can just like stance like the entire time and then just decide when you actually want to do something. And like, even though it's not the fastest thing to do across the battlefield, there is something very satisfying about being like doing an evade into Phoenix stance and then doing like the dragon kick and then immediately being able to evade again and then enter Phoenix stance again, and just like being able to do that across a battlefield to like get to an officer, and it's like, look dude, I'm gonna take a bit to get to you, but I will kill everything in my path while I'm doing it. Or there's stuff where like you can do, like Phoenix stance, dragon kick, immediately transition to the stance that has the launcher, and then do your dive kick bravery stuff. Like there's a lot of cool movement that can be done with this weapon, in terms of like allowing you to move around and allowing you to damage things. And it also just looks really cool. It is honestly, it's a lot better than I thought it was going to be, because I got the gauntlets and I was like, all right, well, it's barehanded stuff. Like, how cool is it going to be? And then it gives you all these stances, and I was like, oh, this was really the point where like I knew that I was playing a Dynasty Warriors game or a Musou game that had a lot of like really good mechanics in it. It was like when I saw this weapon, which is it's the 3rd weapon you get. And I was like, oh, they really went to some good lengths to differentiate these things. And it was amplified by the next weapon, which is the wheels. And I really like the idea of, so the wheels, when you throw them out with your triangle attacks, they remain on the battlefield depending on what, like, and their position depends on where, like, what attack you used and where you were when you threw them. And then they come back to you, and when you time it again, you get like basically an EX version or an enhanced attack of whatever you decide to do. So how you chain these together is like totally up to you, and it rewards like remembering when and where you threw these wheels to like look for them to come back to you. And the amount of crowd control and damage you can have from like actually just paying attention is absurd. And it was like really rewarding to have a mechanic in one of these in a Dynasty Warriors game that really just rewarded you, again, I mean, for lack of a better phrase, you paying attention a little bit more. And it's like, I remember some bosses, like, I would just shred them because I just dished out a bunch of attacks, and it was like, all right, well, you're dead now.
The DW8 had a DLC weapon that actually had just timings on it as well. So like just in case pressing like the buttons at the correct timings to get like bigger moves and more damage and whatnot.
Oh, awesome.
I think the timing in that one is very strict, and I feel like in a game like DW you need to be very careful that you can't make it too easy, because in that case, as you said, there's just no reward anymore. Like, it doesn't feel rewarding, rather. But you can't make it too hard.
Yeah.
And I really like the way the wheels work, because a lot of the wheels is just you, as you said, paying attention, and then you can even, a lot of times you can react to them coming back if you like remember where you put them and think about when they should come back. So like it's not gonna catch even if they go off screen, because there's too many dudes in the way, for example. You can still react to this because you get like a feel for it, and you know where they're coming from and whatnot. And if you actually remember all of this, if you actually pay attention, then you can do all of this. And I feel like the balance for these, like the reward for how hard it is to hit it is really nice, just because it's like it flows very nicely without feeling overly like too easy. But it's not super hard where it just stops you dead in your tracks all the time if you try to interact with the base mechanic of the weapon.
Yeah. And it was it was really cool. I mean, I think really the thing that sold it for me was that, like, when you do the enhanced version of the attack, it's not just like, it's not the enhanced version of whatever you did before. It is the enhanced version of whatever you choose to do afterwards. So, like, you can do the evasion version, like evade triangle, and then when they come back to you, you can be in the air and then do an enhanced air attack. So there's multiple ways that you can just chain this together and just be really creative. And I think too, again, back to like the spatial knowledge thing, you can pick the wheels up and then decide to do it. If you walk over them and then do that. And like that's a little thing. I mean, coming from like League of Legends, there was the character Draven who, like, you have to pick up his axes as they come back to him, you know, and that kind of reminded me of like that, which, like, I mean, say what you will about League, but there's some very like mechanically satisfying characters in that game. And this was like another, like, it reminded me of that, and I was like, awesome, you know, like, give me more stuff where I can interact with like the weapon and just make it do what I want it to do. You know, it's really cool. Like, it also kind of reminds me of like Lucifer in DMC4 to some extent, where like if you understand where you position the pins for Lucifer, I don't think it's as deep as Lucifer, because Lucifer required some people with literal PhDs to figure out like optimal stuff for it. But and that's not a joke, by the way. Like, it was people with PhDs to figure out setups, but it's cool nonetheless. Yeah.
I think like the difficulty for that kind of stuff is like very well tuned towards a game like this, which just never supposed to be super hard. Like, even on the hardest difficulty, I mean, like you're not pulling off these crazy one frame links or something. But like, even then, your own inputs aren't like super complicated, is what I mean. But the game tries to not make it brain dead or anything, and I think it succeeds at that quite a lot of time. You can play weapons that are much easier if you want to. I think it's good that they are there, but it does give you a lot of possibilities for like actual proper player expression. The thing with the wheels, it does remind me of another weapon from DW8, actually DLC one, which I would like to return, but it doesn't really work with the new system because it is very dependent on this on the old combo system, which the sword still has in this, where you could do any finisher that you want, and you could then press the finisher button again to save up the finisher. So the next time you do a finisher, you can add the other one, an enhanced version of it on top of it. Ooh. And so you can do like any finisher and any and an enhanced version in any kind of order that you want. And like if you just press triangle from neutral, you do like a guard break, so it works against blocking enemies, and you can immediately transition to a finisher. It's like very cool stuff. And the wheels kind of remind me of that, and that like you throw out your heavy attack, and then you time whatever other heavy attack you want to, so you get the enhanced version of that one.
Yeah, it's like, a dope weapon, dude. Like,
it's like really fun. They put a lot of thought into these. So like I think DW and Musou in general, they get like a little, I don't want to say entirely undeserved rep for being a little brain dead.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about like how, you know, the fact that there's more dudes to hit buttons against feels a lot better, you know, like, and this is not a game where you're like, I mean, you said this is not a game where you're supposed to stop and start combat, right? And the reductive version of that is this is not a game where you're going to think too much, right? But like, that's kind of the point. That's the game design philosophy is you are charging forward. You are not... Exactly. Like, the enemies are not on the same playing field as you, as opposed to something like, let's say, Ninja Gaiden, where a lot of the enemies are very much like a back and forth thing. This is like, I am that dude, or in the case of older versions, you know, like I am that dude or that chick, you know, and I mean, you even see this too, to an extent, when you activate like War God Rage, which is like the big powered up version. Like this game's Devil Trigger, essentially. From the first moment that you see Guan Yu do an ultimate Musou attack, and the whole screen goes black and white, and everybody just flies backwards. You know, like
you get it.
Yeah, you get that, like you are a god essentially. Like, and that's the thing too with the duels, right? Is that like everybody's acknowledging that you are essentially just a god on the battlefield. Like you are a titan. Like, it is very much not about being on the same playing field as the opponent. Yeah,
and I think this game, like, this is like kind of still a threading a needle, because this can get boring very quickly. Because I mean, the general reception to Musou games is that it is not super exciting. I think this game actually does manage to do that really well, where it will always give you the possibility to play this going forward way. But you need to put like a little effort into it. You don't just get it served on a platter. You need to actually
pay attention.
You need to actually take it a bit. Yeah, you need to be proactive to get that. But it's not super hard still. But yeah, you need to be there, like mentally speaking, to actually get what you want. And then it works super well. There's like no obstacles in the way anymore. That's kind of what it's supposed to be. But the game does actually make you work a little for it, and it becomes much more engaging for that reason, I think.
Yeah, I would say especially when like you get to some of the later chapters and the losses start to stack up, especially even when you're at like even morale. Like there's 2 or 3 battles going on, and one of your officers is going like, "Somebody help me, dude!" And I'm like, "I cannot, bro!" Like, especially when you're in the middle of like a huge battle, and even though individual enemies do not do a ton of damage to you, when there's that many people on the screen, it tends to stack up. So, I mean, even though I mentioned the lance earlier, like, if you stand in crowds too long using that thing and you don't have, like, healing items, you're a goner, dude. Like, it's not pretty.
As you said, like, your health in that moment becomes like an actual resource. Yes. And if you were able to just ignore all of that, then it wouldn't be a resource. Exactly. It would just be a fancy glow. But no, it does actually work out really well. Like, if there's a ton of dudes, they will hit you. There's like a skill tree in this, which I hesitate to call a skill tree because it's very simple, and it's mostly
it's a stat tree, dude. Like,
yeah, it's essentially a stat tree, and sometimes you get like new moves out of it. But there is buffs to your defense and your healing, and like against archers. And they don't put these here because they thought it was funny. Like, these do actually benefit you.
Yeah.
Because you will get hit. Like, there's a game with like where you can get up to 3,000 or even more KOs sometimes. Some of these 3,000 dudes will hit you.
Yes. If somebody managed to do it no damage to this run, I'd be like, you cheated. There's no way, dude.
Yeah, that'd be hard, yeah.
Yeah, there's no way you did no damage of Dynasty Warriors Origins. No shot.
Well, that's a challenge, so if you guys want to do that...
If you want me to call you a cheater publicly, please find a way to do a no damage run of Dynasty Warriors Origins.
Sure, that's your only reward, though.
Your bragging rights and me calling you a cheater. That's really the only reward. The other,
it's like, sorry.
Well, I was going to say the other weapon that I wanted to mention was the Crescent Blade, which I think is not as deep as the other 2 weapons, which, like, unless I'm forgetting something, I feel like the gauntlets and the wheels just have the most, like, mechanics to them so, yeah. in terms of, like, how, like, the skill floor to the skill ceiling, which is not a ton, like, compared to other action games, but, like, it's high for a Musou game. But the Crescent Blade actually having like the interchangeable series of attacks and the way that you like chain them together, stacking up like the way you expend. Again, it's like a stock system where it has the different levels of attack or whatever. I thought that was really neat too, because it was another like it was a resource style weapon, and it's different from the lance in that like instead of your health, it's the way you chain your attacks together. So it, in effect, right, it works like a little bit like the style gauge in a DMC, where it wants you to vary up what you're doing, but it does it in a way that it like directly rewards you. Instead of like a bar on the side of the screen, it'll give you better moves. And not only does it do this for your normal attacks and your strong attacks, but it like you can get enhanced versions of your bravery attacks. So it's nice there too that the bravery system at least ties into the mechanics of a weapon directly. This is also true of the lance, because the lance has bravery attacks where you just go into tank mode and you can just take hits indefinitely, like until it runs out.
Yeah, like there's like some bravery attacks that are literally just you hit things around you, which is fine because you get 4 slots. But some of these are very much intertwined with your weapon, and like even if it might not be a unique mechanic, like for example the launcher and spear, that is still something you do in your combos, and it goes out of your combos and it goes back into your normal combos, and that to me is like always the important thing about when you have these shoulder face button combinations. Because I don't know, I don't want to be pressing my 30 seconds cooldown, you know. I want to do something with it in my normal gameplay.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like I'm trying to like remember another weapon, and I'm like drawing a blank right now.
Some of them have like because you mentioned the pawn strike to stop specific attacks.
Yeah, right.
So every weapon has unique other moves to stop these. They usually cost more, so like you need to be aware of this when you want to use them. But they are usually way stronger. But for example, you can't use them at all times. I noticed, for example, there's enemies that will jump and then do their weird orange attacks.
What's weird is that like the palm strike will actually hit them in the air.
Yeah, palm strike will hit them because that is like your get out of jail card in that moment. But some of your other moves, with other unique weapon moves, are just not going to hit them. So you just stand there like an asshole and eat shit because the move will hit you.
I think the funniest thing too is that like, so when you start using the palm strike, you get used to having to be like in enemies' faces to like stagger them.
Oh yeah,
but like when you
open my drink, I'm thirsty.
I already cracked mine a little bit ago, and it's already gone. But what is it? When I got, I think it was the Gauntlet's stagger move, where it's like just like a line, like a beam essentially, that or like a beam of like wind that comes out of your gauntlet. It's like so long range that like you just duff a bunch of enemies in a row, like in front of you. Like there'll be an officer doing some stagger move like off in the distance, and you're like, no you don't, and then you just dust them. And it's like, oh okay, now you're stunned and now I can go over there and do whatever I need to. This is also true of like, again, like the charges that come at you, which I don't think we've even touched on, like the tactics that you can do with your soldiers. But like, it's funny just being able to like just duff a bunch of enemies just in a line in front of you, and it's like, oh, I'm not used to this. That cost me like 3 bravery as opposed to 1, but sick. But yeah, the tactic system that you can do with your soldiers themselves, which I will say too, in some of the later stages, dude, they die so quickly. Like, it's like, oh, the guard is FUD. I'm like, oh, what else is new? I guess I'm on my own again. But I
gotta leave. Sorry.
I gotta leave. Like, come on, dude. There's 30-something of you. Come on. Which, I mean, the other thing too with these soldiers, I think, is that they actually tie into the amount of enemies or the amount of allies that you have on hand to do certain tactics. So not only do you have, like, you can do your own charges, or you can get volleys or flaming volleys, as well as like an encirclement, which is where, dude, it was so funny. I was fighting Gan Ning, and I did like encirclement, and then all of these 30 soldiers just like huddled around him and started just like stabbing him with a bunch of spears, and he's like, oh. And then I got in there and I just wrecked him, and it was like, oh, this is pretty good, sick.
They're pretty decent.
But I noticed that when you don't have these guys around, like if you try and go off by yourself too much to, for example, like open an enemy base door or something, it'll say like, oh, you don't have enough allies for this tactic. But I think that when you actually have this squad of dudes, you can just do that stuff like even when your allied forces are not near, because you technically always have them on hand. Which is it's an interesting note, because not only do they give you different attacks that, you know, also have different results depending on where you do them from. Like if you do a volley of arrows from very high up, and you just like get it all onto the enemy that's like down in like a valley somewhere, that will give you a dramatic finish result, which don't ask me really what that does, but it's something cool.
It's cool. It's better.
It's better, yes.
It has like a cool name. It's better.
It's cool. It's better. It's like when people say like, well, what do levels do in this game? Levels are good. You know, levels are good. You can level up.
It's a higher number.
It's true. Many people have been saying this. But it's like not only do they give you that, but they also allow you more mobility across the battlefield. Like they actually actively give you more decision-making power in terms of where you're going to go. Like I remember when I was playing through Chapter 1 again recently, I tried to bypass one of the sorcery sections where you have to destroy the sensors for like the Shadow Ninja, like the Foot Clan or whatever that shows up. But on my first time through it again, like on my first replay, I was able to do it no problem because there were a couple of soldiers nearby, and just like, you know, open up a door to go further into a base. The second playthrough, there was nobody around and I wasn't able to do any of it. So I was like, oh fuck, you know, like if I actually had like my squad with me, which you don't even get them at that point in the game, I would be able to just open this door and just be on my merry way. When you actually have a ton of soldiers available, they can keep dying and you'll still have some decision-making power to do stuff off on your own. And you get like more soldiers by doing more of these like mid-level missions and stuff, which is pretty neat. So you are actively rewarded by playing more of the game, which is nice, rather than just outside of improving your character. Yeah, you like get more different kinds of resources. You get more strategies, you get more dudes. Who doesn't like more dudes? Yeah, it's pretty dope. It's pretty dope.
Yeah,
gotta say.
It's like a little. You can even, if you want to, you can ignore this mechanic entirely.
Oh yeah.
Not super important, but if you do it's pretty nice. It helps you. It does help you, especially in the bigger ones where you're fighting a ton of guys, like a ton of officers. I mean, and they can get pretty annoying. So
it is.
You take anything you can get at some points of the game.
Yeah, it's definitely very satisfying to be like, I'll be fighting this guy, and like there's a bunch of dudes all around me, and I'm just like hitting them all, and then more keep coming, and I'm like, you know what? Flaming volley, and then like all these dudes just die at once, and I'm like, the battlefield is now clear. And then you just roll up to the enemy, and the enemy officer like gets their stun gauge basically broken at that point, and it's like, sweet joy.
The enemy officer has been
defeated. So speaking of enemy officers, this is kind of a topic I don't know if we've necessarily skirted around, but what do you think about like Lu Bu's portrayal in this game?
So like just for like some info, some background, Lu Bu is like the big dude in these games who will fuck your shit up when he appears. Yeah. That's like the general idea. So for the first time he appears in this is like it's like pretty early on, and I don't think you're supposed to fight him there. Like the game is just like run. I don't know if you can. I assume you can. I didn't try because at first I tried because I need to know how fast do I die against this man.
Yeah.
Very fast is the answer.
Very, very fast.
Then there's like some later missions where he will attack you, and you're supposed to finish the mission while he is like being held off by other people. As someone who plays a lot of DW, I immediately went for his ass.
Same.
Like, you're gonna die, and just immediately go for him. Something I think is really cool is he has a bunch of unique moves, like that I don't think you can get as a player. Where like he has like a command grab from neutral, for example.
Oh god.
The game highlights unblockable attacks with like a red hue around the character, which is just like get out of the way in
you can't do
some
anything.
way.
Yeah.
Pressing circle works if you have enough Musou bar, but I feel like he could have done even more, to be honest. I think the fight's pretty fun because this is like the first time where you're having like a proper fight against him. In the other games, it's like you press square, triangle, and then you hope he doesn't super armor and kill you. You know?
This is true. Yeah, this is like the first time we've had an interactive fight with Lubu.
Yeah, pretty much.
Until you're like,
that's cool.
The thing, right, is that like. I think it really shines a lot how much this game actually rewards like mechanical knowledge or like just not, I mean like skill is relative, right? But it rewards mechanical skill because in the other games, especially the older ones that I played, you pretty much avoided this guy until you scaled up enough to not have to worry about him anymore. And that really was just kind of time invested rather than necessarily understanding the game more. You were just stronger. But in this game, like when I went after him in the fight where you're technically supposed to, there were times where like he would hit me and I'd be like, okay, well, like half my health is gone, but I could have parried that instead, and I had enough healing that I got through it, but that wasn't because I was like way more powerful than I was supposed to be at that time. It was because I was able to like perfect evade him and parry him like when the game actually told me like, hey, this is what you need to be doing, and you can stagger him here, please do that. So I was able to take him down, and like I haven't checked how many people have this trophy, but it's a silver trophy, so I assume not, because the whole idea is that they built up around this guy, especially from the first encounter, is that he's unfuckwithable. So the fact that the game will reward you for, again, like we've been saying, paying attention more is really nice because it is so different from how else he's handled in this series.
Yeah, it's I don't know, like the moment he appeared in that fight, I immediately just felt like I should go after him because of all the mechanics. Yeah. And they just kind of encourage that. Then you might die to him because he does hit hard, but that's like true. Just try again. It's game checkpoints. You get his ass. He's gonna be impressed.
Yeah. He also he does talk in a very weird way, though, I have to say. Like, when he's talking to Zillowan, like, when they meet or whatever a couple of times, he's, like, constantly talking about, like, dominating him or, like, taking him for his own. And I'm like, man, that is really something else. This is certainly a way to talk to a person. Like,
this guy should calm down.
Yeah, the whole time. And, like, meanwhile, Zillowan's responding like, oh, no, yeah, you seem pretty strong. Yeah, I'm pretty strong too. Yeah, that was a good fight. It's like, dude, come on. Like, this dude just told you he's gonna like crush you under his fist, or unless you follow him or whatever. Like, can we have a little gumption here? Like, come on, bro. It's a little funny. But it's funny. But yeah, no, I was pretty happy with it. I wasn't happy that cool. With the faction that I chose, he just sort of dies off screen, and I don't know if I don't know if that's different in the other factions. I assume that you have a battle where you fight him one last time, which now I have to.
With one of the factions.
Now I just have to make sure that faction is the fastest in the speedrun. so that I can fight Lubu more times.
So you can so you can bring up the meme that even the people who don't play Musou games know.
Exactly.
If you bring it to GDQ somehow, you can be like, in this route, we actually do pursue Lubu.
We do
it's
pursue
essential
Lubu.
to our timer.
Yeah. It is optimal to pursue Lubu.
So when they tell you not to pursue him, they are lying to you.
Oh, so you want me to suffer 2 minutes time loss? I see how it is. Cool.
Wow, it's cool of you.
What route do you use? The pursue Lubu route, the correct one.
But he's like it's like cool because they still make him menacing, but
yeah, definitely
still have the thing where like you can probably fight him now rather than hoping and like whacking him a few times and then jumping out of his reach or something like in old games.
Yeah,
you do actually have like a relatively long fight here. That's like there's like a few bosses in this game actually with a bunch of unique moves, and he does feel like those. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will say too regarding like the controls and like, because I mean the way that you've described what's it called? The way that you've described, having to swing a couple of times and then like jump out of the way. I think that speaks to like the clunkiness of those old games a little bit. Whereas in this game, like, I mean, we've talked about how good the combat is, but on top of that, like the combat, I think feels very responsive and like very smooth on top of how many mechanics there are. Because there are games that have a bunch of mechanics and they don't play well together. But in this game, like, I never felt like I was not in control of what I was doing. I mean, there's recovery frames, right, on some things, but when it comes to like making a decision mid-fight or being able to do something or be able to take a turn back, I never felt like I was fighting against the controls or anything like that. I don't think I ever felt like that in this game at all.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's like it sounds like kind of stupid because like it's the controls should work, but in a lot of action games you have a lot of stuff and they technically work, but they don't intersect very well. You just have these systems and they are in the game.
Yeah, sometimes it's like disparate mechanics, right?
Yeah, and you don't want to really use them, and the game doesn't encourage using multiple ones in succession or like chaining stuff or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, again, to kind of jab at Final Fantasy 16 a little bit. Again, it's like Final Fantasy 16 starts out with, I think, pretty cohesive combat to a degree, where you're using auto attacks and you're using like the jump cancel that they give you. It should have been more than one, but anyway. And it gives you the Phoenix style, which plays into the auto attacks really well. Then it gives you Garuda afterwards, which also kind of plays into that pretty decently well, with the launcher and everything that it gives you. And then you move into these systems like Gilgamesh, or I'm sorry, Bahamut maybe it was. I forget which the blonde-haired dude was, the guy, the Dragoon. I forget which one.
That's Bahamut. Yeah.
Bahamut, yeah. I don't know why I said Gilgamesh. Anyway, Bahamut and Ramu to an extent too, and then even like Odin's sword like exists separate to a lot of the other mechanics in the game, and the game really turns into dumping cooldowns while like, I guess, whacking away when you don't have them up, and it's like you, for example, you set up the lightning rod, and then you whack away with Odin's thing, and then when Odin's are all charged and the lightning rod's still up, you do Giga Flare, Mega Flare, or whatever it is, and then now everything's done for a little bit, and like maybe you use the big ultimate Odin move, and now you're just back to zero, and you have to wait for stuff to come back up, and there is nothing you can do in some instances but wait. And I mean, the controls in that are decently smooth. I mean, there's times where like it just feels like they don't want you to be doing certain things too fast, so they lock you out of actions, which is also not great. But like in Dynasty Warriors Origins, You are always in control. You can always make a decision. I mean, again, outside of like maybe 2 or 3 recovery frames that things have just for animation smoothness purposes. But
yeah,
I mean, like there's been stuff again, like with the Phoenix stance dragon kick cancels. I've been able to dodge early enough where his like feet are not even off the ground during the dragon kick cancel, and you can just enter Phoenix stance again. Like the game gives you so much freedom to do everything, and when you run out of bravery for moves because you spent a bunch of bravery, number one, you made the decision to do that, right? But you can actively build back bravery quicker depending on how well you play and how actively you play. So you can always do something.
Like parrying stuff and just dodging gives you a lot of bravery back pretty quick.
Yep.
So if you're starved for bravery, you know where to get it from. Like, I mean, whacking dudes always works because the Musou game. But,
yes. Another million square triangles to Dynasty Origins.
It always works.
It always does. Yeah, it's pretty great.
But no, as you said, it is actually like I don't want to say like a good action game for a Musou game. It is straight up a good action game.
Yeah,
I think this is like
I would say so.
We can definitely stress. Yeah, definitely. I think this is a good action game. Period. Like, I mean, it's no DMC. What is?
No, true. Yeah.
Like, sadly, nothing. No one's trying. But it is a good action game. Like, I know this sounds kind of stupid, but
yeah, I mean, it's a little
games
weird.
Have like this reputation of being like
mindless.
They are like this bottom layer of action games, and like other action games exist on top of them, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, like
no, they are. This is good. Like this is very this. You can just play this, and you will think, yeah, no, this is just normally fun to play like an action game, and not just like good for a Musou game.
I mean, the last couple of months when I've been like getting into Sengoku Basara, you know, like when people start asking me like what this is if they haven't seen it before, I usually have been describing it as like, imagine if Dynasty Warriors were Devil May Cry. And now, like, I actually have something corporeal to point to as to what that actually looks like that's named Dynasty Warriors. Because this game definitely draws, I think, a little more, like, DNA from that sort of philosophy of, like, allowing players to just do whatever with a multitude of things that interact. Yeah. Like, I think the most important part of this game is that, I mean, one of the things that makes Devil May Cry so good is that there's no central mechanic that you can really point to that defines the combat. And I think that's true of Dynasty Warriors Origins as well. I mean, the thing that I think probably comes the closest maybe is the bravery system. But outside of that, like the fact that there's so many unique weapon movesets, really, I think, just highlights that the bravery system there is there to supplement and complement what you're doing normally, and like give you more options to do stuff. As opposed to being like what you are basing everything around. And the Musou attacks are all so short because they're pretty much just like one big hit, as opposed to you know, like being unique, super unique to weapons where, like, you know, example, Ganning in the old games would run around and just like, you know, cut through a bunch of people, and his was mostly designed for crowd control as opposed to 1v1. Whereas Lubu was like, he just danced he like spun a bunch of times and then slammed the ground. This was really good for juggling an officer, or also crowd control because he's Lubu. But it's very cool now that there's no like thing where the game's like, do this thing and then get your dopamine. You know, it wants you to do pretty much everything. It wants you to engage with everything, which I think is sick. You know, I've said it like 10 times. I think it's just sick, dude. Like it's just a really fun game.
Yeah, and like those things are actually surprisingly rare in like the realm of action gaming. As you said, usually there is like this one big central mechanic that kind of overshadows the rest a little, which is again the one of the biggest strengths of DMC, that it doesn't have this. where the biggest mechanic is that you hit the enemy until it is dead. It's just like that, you know, and you hit them without letting them hit you, which works in every single fight. Very cool, actually, that it works. But this is like not on the same level of depth, of course, but it is, I think, cut from like a similar kind of approach to game design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where you're, again, just what you just said, really. The systems interact with each other meaningfully rather than being stacked on top of each other.
Yeah. I mean, you could really only argue that like the tactic system is kind of stacked on there, but I think that at the very least, that is there to give you more options to deal with fights or to at least play into more of like the larger scale combat that's going on, right? You know, and I think that. And I mean, I even said it before, like it gives you more options to move around the battlefield in some cases. So while it might not mean as much in direct combat, it does fit into the larger scope of the game, which is also cool.
Yeah, and like even this game has, though, you know, that mechanic where like the enemy flashes in a specific color and you need to do the specific move. I wouldn't even, like, in this game, you can do the palm strike, you can do a Musou attack, you can dodge it if you want to.
Yep.
There's, like, a lot of options here, and it is actually limited to that kind of move. There's also unblockables, which is, like, fair enough. But outside of that, I think this is, like, a thing that a lot of games copied. I want to say from Sekiro, personally, which did it in a very specific way to make it work. And a lot of games, I think, copy it kind of like, yeah, well, if there's an attack in this color, then you need to do that, which is like, I'm not playing Simon Says here, my guy. That's not why I'm here for. And like the system in Sekiro is like very complicated. It is not just if there's an attack, like if there's the symbol, then you need to do this. And that's why it works in that game. I think another game where it works really well is Neo 2, also Koei Tecmo, but Team Ninja in this case, where there is these red attacks where you need to do a specific move. However, you have like different spirits like equipped, and they give you different counter moves for these. And they are not just like, one of them is like a normal, you whack the guy with a fast attack. This is like very standard. You knock him out of the move, kind of like the palm strike. Another one is like has like iframes, and you need to be hit during the iframes, for example. So you actually need to like pay attention to the moves a little more, and depending on what you have, you need to change your approach a little. And then, like in a lot of other games, I'm just not going to name examples here because I'm a very nice person. It is literally just, you have the blue move, you do the blue thing, or you have the orange move and you do the orange thing. I don't know. The reacting to that stuff is very boring. This works like in a fighting game where it's a mix-up, like a 50-50 or something, where you need to decide what you do beforehand, and but it doesn't. I think in a game like this, it can get very boring to react to that kind of stuff over and over again. In this, it works really well because you press the button very quick, you keep going forward again. You can also dodge it if you want to, which might actually be better because, first of all, you might not have the bravery to press it if you spend your resources unwisely. Secondly, getting the just dodge gives you like a shit ton of bravery back. It's like 2 points or something. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Like almost 2. You get a ton of stuff for that back. So like, you have some options to deal with these things. You can equip a move that you really like that deals with them as well. And you can always do the good old Musou attack, which has iframes and interrupts every enemy. So, like, I never feel, which is my problem where in other games where they railroad me into specific options. I don't really like that. In this game, this game doesn't do that, and I'm very thankful for that because it is a very annoying trend. Which again, I really like Sekiro. I think people should stop trying to copy that game if they don't get why it was good.
Yeah, it's like FromSoft games are usually like good for very specific reasons rather than like sweeping, I guess, generalizations about their mechanics.
You can't just take these and expect them to work in your game, essentially, unless you're making Lies of P, which is literally just a FromSoft game, like three little FromSoft games in trench coat or something.
Yeah, I mean, like FromSoft games it's so deliberate, right? That design philosophy that like you have to understand not only the mechanics individually, but like the big picture behind them.
Yeah, and I think like this game is surprisingly deliberate too at what it does, and which is letting you always go forward, and literally everything in the game is tailored around this. And they knew like some aspects to take from other games. As you said, there's definitely a bunch of like DMC DNA in here.
Yeah.
Just like not the super apparent thing where it's like, oh, they copied how the inputs work or something, which games should, by the way. If you play DMC, please just copy the system. It's the best one. You're not coming up with a better one. Period.
True.
I'm telling you. But in this case, I mean, it would be kind of awkward in this game, maybe. But
yeah, you could always just have prioritize officers.
Yeah, exactly. But like the freeform way the combat works and the mechanics intersect with each other is very smart. It is like genuinely surprisingly smart for an action game like this to actually have this sort of flow.
Yeah, it's really, really, really good.
Yeah, I'm really, really happy with this game. Honestly, I
can see myself playing it a lot more. So.
Yeah, I need to get around to a lot more too. Like as I said, I got one of the two endings, did some other stuff. So like after I don't want to say like after DW9 I was like, oh, it's fucking over, right? Because they did make a bunch of games after that still that I really like. They made the second Fire Emblem Musou, which I think is really good. I'm like a big Fire Emblem Musou truther. A lot of people don't like that game. They're like, the roster kind of sucks and blah blah blah. And I don't give a shit. That's a good ass Musou game. If like someone just wants like a good Musou game, there's your square triangle right here. This is a good ass game. But so I was never like, it's over for Omega Force or something. They've been making stuff after DW9 that was good. But this is like a level above all that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some of the other stuff that they've done, and like you said, it's good, but Origins,
no DW Origins.
Yeah, boy, Origins is really good. I mean, I this is my copium for the episode here, where like I hope that Capcom sees like what is being done with Origins and be like, maybe we should make a Sengoku Basara 5, and then they can elevate the Musou genre even more, because they were ahead 20-something years ago. Maybe they can continue to be ahead. Maybe this is where we get the Musou game that copies DMC even more, and we can do what is it? We can do shuffle guard cancels with Date Masamune, or whatever Nero has. So
which character gets the guard fly?
which character can do guard flies? I feel like that's Sasuke, would it not be? Because he's like one of the...
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the ninja, yeah. I feel like Sasuke would be the one to guard fly. Yeah.
Yeah, I like, I like Sengoku Basara a lot too. I think I'd definitely take a fifth game, and like Capcom are on a stride. They're making some pretty good games. At this point, we have no idea how the Onimusha game plays. I doubt it's going to be anything like that, though it will have combos. I'm like very sure of that.
I have to think that it's going to take probably the RE remakes as a base, but be like very melee centric in that.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to have jumping, right? So
probably not, yeah. But it would have like dodging and parrying and like small combos. Probably, it's going to be a little more deliberate than a game like this, I think.
Yeah, because the RE remakes typically have like a precursor to what's coming next in them. Because like RE2R showed a lot of the foundation, and then RE3R, has the dodge mechanic. And then in RE4R, they added in the parries. And now I'm like, is this the precursor to Easons in the new Onimusha?
It would be interesting.
I mean, maybe it is. Yeah.
Like, could also go in a completely different way. We have no idea at this point.
It's true.
But
who knows?
Like about the Senkobasa games, there's like a very smart thing they do, because sometimes you got to talk about how good these games are, which is they let you do any special move at any point, rather than putting stuff on cooldown. So like there's directional moves in that, and then there's combinations, and this is the DMC thing that I mean, where like you can do all of these things. The game doesn't want you to, I don't know, you don't need to dance 3 times before you can, like, before your cooldown is back. Like, you don't need to go around in circles and do some other stupid stuff. You can do your moves.
Which is just, like, that's just the most important part of an action game. Just
exactly,
let me hit my buttons, please.
So many games get it wrong somehow. Senkobasa are really nice. Not an episode about Senkobasa, but it is inevitably gonna come up when you talk about Musou games.
Absolutely.
But no, I think pretty good, strong start to 2025. Pretty good action game, actually. Like
certainly blew my expectations away. I mean, I've really not got. I would just continue to heap praise on this game for another hour, but I should probably let you go instead. Honestly. We probably be quitting soon. It's just like a few minor things that I don't want to omit. Is this is not really extraordinary for this game, but the music's really good. All DW games have really good music. It's not different in this game. It's nothing new or anything. It's just, like, there's good compositions. The instruments sound good. There's one thing I noticed that is really cool and a standout thing compared to the other games, which is if you pause, it goes into this version without the percussion, where it's just the guitar and the bass, really, and sometimes flutes or whatever is there. And that one also sounds really cool. Like on the pause screen of any battle, the music sounds really unique. It's really nice. But apart from that, it is DW music. It is good. Yeah. I guess the one thing that I do want to touch on just very briefly is, like, I saw reviewers cite the lack of co-op as a flaw. And I'm like, you're playing the wrong game. Like,
I think so too in this case, yeah.
It's like... It was like when people said that, like, DMC5's lack of co-op was a flaw, and it's like, I mean, the cameo system did, like, kind of cock tease everybody, but, you know, like, in that case, I understand a little bit more, but a lack of co-op, like, for a single-player focused game is not a flaw. Could it have been something that they did? Like, sure, but it's sort of like saying, like, you know, what is it, like, oh, you didn't give me garlic dipping sauce with my pizza. Like, okay, I mean, that would be cool, but I don't think it's necessary to eat a pizza. I
get where it's coming from, because the idea is that the old games, or like a lot of the old games, rather, not all of them, have split screen and online co-op, but I think this game is, like, again, it is focusing on something else, and it does that really well, and I think co-op would have, I don't know if it would have worked that well in this.
It might have detracted a little bit, I mean, at least. I mean, you could have online co-op and maybe have you play Ziloan and the woman, I think her name was Zuhei. But, I mean, you could do it that way, but again, like... I don't know. It just seems like it's just not. I mean, how much free play do you get out of that, really? If you're playing the same 2 characters with like 7 or 8 different weapons, right? It's just not. It's not the same kind of replayability as like, oh hey, I'm gonna play Zhao Yun this mission, or who are you gonna play? Oh, I'm gonna play Zhao Cao, or oh, I'm gonna play Zhao Hudun. Like, there's just not the same, I guess, incentive there. It's sort of like how like nobody talks about the co-op in Bayonetta 2. Right.
Yeah. I think the split screen or co-op in general here is literally just like a sacrifice of this whole refocusing and like I want to say actually laser focused idea of how the game is supposed to work, and I know it's like a trade off. I'm personally as someone who did play the old games in split screen, very much willing to make, because I do think it does result in a better game overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to think so too. Well, Don, it's been a blast.
Yeah,
appreciate
it's been 2 hours.
I was gonna say I thought we were gonna maybe go for like an hour and a half,
Yeah,
but
I thought so too. No,
game's pretty good. Turns out when game is good, you want to talk about it more.
Yeah.
So
you can talk about them for long. Like there's stuff happening in this video game. Very nice to have you here again. You can find him as DECosmic on Twitch. You can at GDQ a lot of times.
Yeah, that's
all
true.
the VODs are up. You can watch all that stuff. And I think you're on Blue Sky, but I don't know if you want to plug that or.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really post a whole lot now because I'm trying to minimize the amount of time that I spend on social media. But you can find me at decosmic.bsky.social, and again, the YouTube is at decosmicruns. If you don't really have a chance to catch me live because you're in Europe, then that's probably the place to catch a lot of what I do is on YouTube.
Yeah. So like give that a follow. We will have links in the description if you're too lazy to type all that stuff. And it was very nice to have you here. Like first time you as a guest here in the podcast. We do English episodes sometimes, but
it's been awesome.
Very cool. Very nice to have someone to talk to about this game who actually knows something about action games. This is not a jab at anyone else in the podcast. I just mean because a lot of people don't know stuff about action games.
It's true. They don't. Yeah. I mean, action games are often reduced to, quote unquote button mashers. So it's been quite refreshing to talk to you about this game. And I was really looking forward to doing this. So again, thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. And with that, I think I will let you be your way, and I hope you guys had a lot of fun with this. And you should buy Dynasty Warriors Origins.
You should.
The listener. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.